Welcome to another exciting episode of Many Hats of Business, the podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Gordon, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today. On this podcast, we explore the realities of business and the many hats we have to wear. I'll be speaking to some fantastic business owners about their journey to where they are today in the hope that they inspire you to go through the tough times so that you get to relish the rewards having your own business can bring. Before we jump in, a quick reminder to subscribe, rate and leave a review if you enjoy what you hear. Your support means the world to us and helps Many Hats of Business, the podcast, reach even more curious minds like yours. Alright, let's get started. Get ready to be entertained, informed and inspired. This is Many Hats of Business, the podcast. Welcome to today's super exciting episode of Many Hats of Business, the podcast. And today I am joined by an actual legend, Graham Short, and we're going to hear more about him. You may have heard about him. Some of his legendary work includes him engraving the whole of the Lord's Prayer onto a tiny pinhead, and we will be asking him about that. And also, less complicated, I imagine, than most of his works, but in 2016, he engraved some £5 notes that went into circulation that, because Graham had engraved them, became worth £50,000, and he spent them in local shops dotted around the country so that people may find them and have some of his work that way. So we might have to ask him about that as well. And the reason I wanted Graham on here today, because it is a podcast about business, but everything Graham does is all about excellence. And I think it's an important thing for us to realise. He's been doing what he does for many years, and I can't wait to find out how he got into this. And just that longevity piece, I think nowadays so many people in business and in life, they want those overnight results. They want things quicker. And Graham is a brilliant example of just keeping going and striving for that excellence. And I think he can be a great inspiration to us all. So thank you so much for joining us, Graham.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm totally honoured to have you, as everyone of I've already been talking about, that you're a legend is coming, and they don't know who, and I'll be able to say after today. And it's interesting because most people know I've got an engraving company, and I just want to take a second to point out to people that what we do couldn't be further from each other, because there's very little skill in what I do, and Graham is the most skillful micro-engraver on the planet. So, you know, we couldn't be further apart from what we do. So how did you get into it, Graham?
Well, left school at 15, no qualifications whatsoever, totally unprepared, not just for working life, for any kind of life. Went to lunch at a local print works in Birmingham, and the boss, Mr. Evans, said, your job for the first 6 months is to empty the mouse traps and make the tea for the men in the factory. And he said, in between doing that, I'll teach you how to do copper plate hand engraving, which is wedding invitations. And in the mornings, I had to go and crawl under the benches, empty the mouse traps and drop the dead mice into a dustbin. Absolutely hated it. I'm still frightened of mice now. And after a few days, went back and said to my mother, that's it. Don't want to be an engraver anymore. She said, why ever? I thought you were enjoying it. And I actually said to her, I don't think I'm cut out to work with animals. And she said, who sets the traps in the evening? I said, that's my job as well. She said, why don't you put the food on the spike, but don't pull the spring back? Then in the night, the mice will come, take the food, and off they'll go. My mother lived to be 100 years and 1 month. And I can tell you now, that's the best advice she ever gave me. And of course, the next day, the boss came.
She sounds like a clever lady, doesn't she?
She was. But the next day, the boss came in, and it was his ritual. I'd drop the dead mice into a dustbin. He would lift the lid and count out loud how many mice were in there. And everybody would applaud him, about 9 or 10 mice. And, of course, the next day, after messing about with not putting the food, not pulling the spring back and everything, there were no mice in the dustbin. And he put the lid down, didn't say anything, went into his office. The same happened the next day. He lifted the lid to the dustbin. No mice. He slammed it down. Said, come on, in my office, I want a word with you and know what you've done. I'd worked a week. Everybody was frightened of him, such a really big man. and I was going to be sacked. So I went into the office and he sat down behind his desk. He said, I know what you've done. You've done something no other apprentice before you has done. You have managed to eradicate the mice from these premises. So, of course, I certainly didn't own up to that. It's just one of the many things I've never owned up to ever since. But when I finished my apprenticeship, which is just 6 years, I wanted to work on my own. And my main work was letterheads and business card wedding invitations, embossed stationery. And it looked absolutely beautiful when it's finished. You could feel the ink raised on the surface. And I rented a small room in Birmingham. It was only £6 a month. That's all it cost me. There was cold water, no heating, nothing else. But I took samples to London and I went to Savile Row and I went to number 1. I didn't make an appointment, just went along with my samples of my stationery. And I went in, I asked the lady on reception, could I speak to the stationery buyer? And she said it's his day off. And I'd gone all the way to London to speak to him. But she said, don't worry, I'll call Charles Benson down. I said, who's that? She said, he's the chairman of the group. I thought, what have I got myself into? Anyway,
you then, Graham, as well, because if it was after your apprenticeship, like, you wouldn't have been that old, would you? Very brave.
I was 21, 22. And she said, I'll call him down. And then she said, it'll be half an hour. He's in the boardroom. I thought, I don't want to meet the chairman. I just want somebody who's going to buy some stationery. And when I was downstairs waiting for him, people come and ask me, the assistant, what do I want? I said, well, I've come to meet the chairman, I told them. And they were showing me around. The clothes were beautiful, top tailors. And I looked at a blazer. And 1971, we dropped, we went into decimalisation, Britain did. But they were still selling clothes and advertised it in guineas. And I saw the blazer, and it was 48 guineas. Now, at the time, I was earning about £30 a week on the last year of my apprenticeship. Anyway, I tried it on. It was beautiful. And I said to the assistant, I said, I'll have it, but can you keep my jacket somewhere else? Because I'm going to meet your chairman. Anyway, down he came, lovely man, Charles Benson. You see, straight away, call me Charles. And he said, what have you got there? And I showed him the samples. I said, I'd like to engrave Gibbs and Hawkes stationery. I said, I think that's going to be expensive. I said, it is, but I'm going to give you 2 reams. That's 2 boxes, 1,000 sheets for nothing. I won't even charge you. And he said, why would you do that? I said, well, once I bring them back to you in a couple of weeks' time, I'll go round Savile Row and Jermyn Street. I'll go to all the shops and I'll show them that I'll do your work. And hopefully I'll pick up some orders. And he said, what a great idea. He really liked it. I could feel him warming to me. And I said, when I could feel that, and he said, I've got some contacts, I can put you in touch with them. So I thought, I've made it. And I was really relaxed. And I said, actually, I like your clothes that you sell. I said, look at this jacket. I said, I've had it a few months and it looks brand new. And he said, I'll tell you why it looks brand new. It's the quality of the material we use. He said, you can wear it for ages and it'll still look new on you. Anyway, as I left he agreed he'd have the station. As I left the shop, he said to me, oh, by the way, I hope you like the jacket. We only had them in yesterday. It's a new range. And he smiled at me. He absolutely knew what I was doing. And anyway, I went back a couple of weeks later. I took the stationery and he said, I want you to go to Savile Row. He said, do you know Turnbull and Asser? So I said, don't know them, never heard of them. They said they supply shirts to the royal family. He said, I've spoken to somebody there. He's interested in the stationery. I hadn't even shown him anything. And then he said, I want you to go to Lob, the bootmakers. I've spoke to somebody there. Then there's Thomas Pink. I want you to go. He got me so many orders. And I always look back and think how lucky I am. The fact that on that one day when I called in, the stationery buyer, it was his day off. And this man, Charles Benson, I kept in touch with him over the years. And he put me in touch with Liberty, Fortnum and Mason, Harrods. I was doing all their stationery. And it was the luckiest day of my life. In business, you can work hard and you can do well, but you need a lot of luck with it. It was just luck. That's all it was.
Amazing though, isn't it? But, you know, like you say as well, it's that relationship. He warmed to you, didn't he? And then, and people do want to help people. And I think that's something a lot of people in business, and certainly in the early days, they can forget that, can't they? And I think it is that thing of, if you build the relationships and show that you genuinely care and you genuinely want to do a good job, people will help you, won't they?
Yeah, my work sells in galleries. Many people have helped me get into galleries, and I've always looked after them. I always say that if you're in manufacturing and making something and somebody buys it and maybe wants to sell it, you've got to make sure there's something in it for them. Everybody's got to eat. And I've got, when I sell in the gallery, they take 60% of the sale price. I've got a manager, he takes 50% of what's left. A PR company in Cheshire, they represent me, take 25%. The man who makes the display case under the microscope where my work's shown, he has between £800 and £2,000. But you have to accept that everybody must have something. You can't be greedy. If you are greedy and take the whole lot for yourself, you'll have a good day, but you won't do any good in future. And if you can help people when they're selling something for you, they'll always come back and try harder and harder. So that was one lesson I learned early on, that everybody must have a portion. They've all got to eat. They've all got to go to the supermarket and buy food and pay for the children at school or whatever.
Yeah, and it's amazing, isn't it, that, like you say, and it's interesting that you do talk about that, the figure quite so much, because people would automatically assume, oh, that's an expensive item they're buying. Some of yours are around £50,000, aren't they, for some of your works? Yeah. It's a bit depending on the complexity, does it?
Yeah, but the galleries they use, they're top end, and they take 60%. But you have to accept that. You have to decide what you want, and if others make money out of it, that's okay.
Yeah, and like for you, it is that thing, isn't it, of being able to know that your work is out there. You know, like, you're the best at what you do. And I asked you yesterday, didn't I, about like that drive that you must have had in spades to keep going all of these years. And for you, it is very much about being the best. Having left school in that position, you know, you want to be the best, don't you? And
yeah, it's really everything with me is an obsession. It's not a hobby, it's not a job. I am totally obsessed with wanting to be the best at whatever I do. And I think having left school with no qualifications, you can't really go down from that. You can only go up. That's helped a lot, actually. That's helped a lot. So,
obsessions, and you know, how you do immerse yourself into something, don't you? I know you're an avid swimmer, and you'll see I've got my swim hat on the wall. That's too.
Should be on your head, not on the wall. Yeah, I've always been a swimmer.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I've always been a swimmer. I swim in masters events. That's for everybody over the age of 25, and you swim in 5-year age bands, 25 to 30, 30 to 35, 35 to 40, and so on. It goes on forever. And the secret is, the older you get, you have to try and outlive everybody, and then you win everything. But I think I was 54, 55, 23 years ago. And swimmers my age were doing about 12,000 meters a week in training. And because of me being obsessed with whatever I do, I thought I'll try and do 60,000 or 70,000. And I was super fit. I entered the European Masters Championships in Mallorca. And when I got there, I looked at the program, and my event was 200 meters butterfly. My time was 20 seconds faster than anybody else. Wow. And I won easily just because I was super fit. I broke the European record, became the European champion for my age. But
the break that no one likes.
I say everything I do, I have to do the same. I can't do anything sensibly.
It is amazing, isn't it? I know, like, when I was looking at it, and actually I did look at you set the world record in 2016, didn't you, for a European record in 2016. Was that foot crawl?
Yeah, I've got a European record for 1,500 meters front crawl. What I do, I'll tell you my secret. Because you're swimming 5-year age bands, I just tick over for 5 years. I go into it when I'm the youngest in a 5-year group. So, of course, I've got a big advantage then. But I do lots of swimming. Even now, I'm doing 6,000 meters a day. And in the last 8 or 9 months before the event, I'll bump it up to 10,000, which is, it's a hell of a lot. It's a lot of swimming.
So you're still swimming more than once a day because you're not doing 6,000?
At the moment, I'm doing the 5 or 6,000 meters in one session every morning. But when I bump it up to 2, I'll do a morning and evening.
Wow. That's immense so I had a look at your record last night because I like swimming and I'm not as fit as I should be in any stretch. I don't do it as consistently as I'd like. And I thought, I'm just going to have a look and see what this record is. And it was based on about 22 seconds of length, wasn't it? So that European record.
Yeah.
2016, which isn't that long ago. And it's just incredible. I tend to average about 30 seconds of length, but to keep that up for 60 lengths, like, incredible. So I just...
Oh, I was fit. That's all it is. You've got to be fit.
Well, I won't be inviting you for a swimming race, Graham, that's for sure.
Well, you can do. We'll put some money on it. I might make a bit out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm going to lose all any credit in the gym and all sorts. And so I'd lose the bet too.
I hope you do. I want to beat everybody in whatever I do.
You would, wouldn't you? We could have a swim.
Yeah. And you know, I'd love it if I beat you in the pool.
Well, you would. Well, maybe we will have to sort that after all. At the swimming, though, it massively helps in your craft, doesn't it?
Yes, I have to be as still as possible. The smallest, I've got one here actually. What I use to engrave with is just a needle pushed into a wooden handle. I'd like to say it was high-tech equipment, but it isn't. It's just an ordinary needle.
Nobody makes the high-tech equipment that you would need to be good enough and small enough.
I'm afraid that's all it is. But I have to be as still as possible. I work from midnight to 5 a.m. And I do that to avoid any vibration from passing traffic. If a lorry went past outside, it would feel like an earthquake through my microscope. I work through a powerful medical microscope. And I loop a leather strap around my elbow. The other end goes around a press. And I pull against it as hard as I can. Keeps my hand dead still. I wear a stethoscope when I'm working. Sellotape it to my chest. And I listen to my heart rate. Now, I've got a friend in Birmingham. He owns 3 chemist shops. And he gives me potassium, magnesium and beta blockers. I eat them like sweets. But after about 20 or 30 minutes, my heart rate drops to 20 beats a minute. And that's when I try to engrave between heartbeats, when I'm absolutely dead still. The smallest lettering I can engrave by hand is 6 microns high. Give you an example, a hair is 100 microns thick. So you can see how small it is. It's the same size, a small red human blood cell. And every 3 months, I have a course of Botox injections into my eyelids. And that ensures that when I'm working, there's no distraction from my nerves and muscles. And doing a lot of swimming gives me a low resting heart rate. Because of course, the fitter you are, the lower your heart rate. So that gives me a good base to work from before the tablets start kicking in. I do go to extremes, but again, it comes back to this obsession. I know that.
Is it dangerous?
No, not at all. No, I haven't had I've had a cold for about 8 or 9 years. I'm really quite healthy.
Well, you look and sound healthy. It's unbelievable, isn't it? But I think it is that thing, isn't it, where I think on the whole, as a population, we don't strive for excellence in the most part anymore. And I think we certainly don't go to those extremes. And not that everyone would be able to, go to those extremes, because it's the consistency, isn't it? You've had to make excellence a habit to even stand with this. Even, it's like you said, your base fitness gives you a really good place to start from. Other people, if they were just going to take the tablets like Smarties without having that, it's not going to work, is it? And then you've got to do both, it's a huge commitment, isn't it? It's like your whole life.
Yeah, that's right. I can't tell the doctor what I'm taking because some of these are on prescription. So I'm healthy. I don't go to the doctors at all. But
well, I've seen you in a while, do they?
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. So I'm putting some pictures in the blog post so people will be able to see and they can come and find you. But the sheer size, it's difficult to understand, isn't it? Because so to most people in the world, millimeters are small. And interestingly, only you and an ear surgeon that goes to do brain surgery, if it's linked with ears, you two are the only people in the world that I've ever spoken to that appreciate that millimeters are actually massive. So
yeah.
You showed me, and there's a picture of it. The Van Gogh, the pin that is on is 2 millimeters wide. And you can see that it takes, from a width point of view, probably around half of it, which means the Van Gogh picture is only a single millimeter wide, which is this measurement on a ruler, and that's the whole thing. And the detail is immense. And I just really want people to understand the sheer brilliance that it is, because I think it looks so detailed and so good.
Oh, I can tell you a bit about the detail in it. Every job I do, I slip and I have to repolish and start again. But the image I sent you of Van Gogh's sunflowers, the frame is so intricate and the flowers as well. But there are many, many slips in that, and I can disguise them with the pattern. So I've got away with a lot of that.
So sometimes it being more intricate is actually a good thing because you've got more scope for hiding.
That's it.
So Shakespeare must have been quite tricky then, because that's actually quite a plainer design in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, when I engraved Shakespeare, that's on a speck of gold in the eye of a needle. I tried to show every single hair. And many times I didn't. I was slipping into a different... There's nowhere to move. I can't just put the needle in and push it. There's absolutely nowhere to move. I only have to touch it gently and I can slip through 6 or 7 letters next to it or whatever I'm working on. And it really is frustrating.
Oh, I can't imagine. The idea that you can be midway through a piece and sometimes probably near the end and that happening is, I suppose, demoralising.
Well, when I get near to the end, I go really slowly. I take my time. I have slipped before on doing the last letter, but I do tend to take my time on that.
It's just that level of perfection, isn't it, that's required. And it's funny because in some ways I'm a recovering perfectionist and I'm trying not to be like a total perfectionist because it can stall progress with some things, but you're the exact opposite. You've had to keep striving for perfection to stay the top of your field, don't you?
Yeah. I do slip on every job. Each job takes an average of 3 months, depending how much is in it. If there's only a little bit on it, then I can do it quicker. But the only thing is, I can't put a message, say, I love you on a pin, because there's nothing to it. Nobody's impressed. The only time they're impressed, if I can get a lot on it. I engraved a nail was sent to me by stables in Newmarket. And it's one of the nails that they hit the lightweight horseshoes on the racehorses. And it's 3 millimeters wide, 3 millimeters long, 2 millimeters wide. And I've engraved the names of all the Cheltenham Gold Cup winners. And there's 840 letters on that. And that does impress people. The more you put on, or the smallest. I mean, well, I started off trying to engrave along the sharp edge of a razor blade.
Saw that. You have nothing is impossible.
That's it. That was and that took me 9 months. I lost count at blade number 95, 96. I kept slipping. I'd throw them away, get another blade. But it took so long because I kept cutting my fingers while I was working. So I'd stop until my fingers healed. And then I'd go and cut them again. Then my fingers became infected. And I was working then with a disinfectant spray on my hands. I don't think it was the blades that caused the infection, probably the dirty workbench.
Oh, my word. Yeah, that sounds like proper pain for your...
But it's always nice when it's finished.
Yeah, I bet. When you've done that last piece and you're like, oh my God,
yeah.
I haven't really done the last letter.
That's the best bit. And the best bit for me is when it's in a gallery and somebody looks at it under the microscope and they say, "Oh my word, unbelievable." It's nice to get that reaction.
Yeah,
It really is.
so, I mean, photographing it must be near impossible, mustn't it, as well? Because it's so small.
I couldn't photograph it. I tried to photograph all my work, and I couldn't get a good picture of the razor blade, the edge, because it was so small. So I sent it off to Cambridge University. They've helped me out with photographing. And somebody called me and said, "You know how small it is?" So I couldn't measure it. I haven't got it all small enough to measure that. Then he said it's 5 microns high, the lettering. And he said that's smaller than a red human blood cell. So I was pleased with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's handy having clever friends in places, isn't it, that know this stuff?
Yeah. But the smallest piece I've done had a 1/2 inch length of a lady's blonde hair. And I soaked it in vinegar for 4 days and baked it in the oven. Now, if you do that, it brings out all the texture in the hair. It makes it brittle and it brings out the colouring and it looks beautiful. And I put a gold disc in it and I've engraved a motorbike on that. That's the absolute smallest I can do.
That looks amazing, doesn't it? And the picture of that, I'll share that because, yeah, that hair is sensational, isn't it? When you think how thin the hair is on your head.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when you see the picture, it's so large, you don't really get a good idea that it is that small.
That's part of the problem, though, isn't it? Because people see pictures of what you do, and it's just not obvious that it's
Yeah.
You've obviously you've met a lot of people as well, haven't you, doing what you do? Because there's a lot of famous people that have got your work as well.
Yeah, the Institute of Cancer Research contacted me a couple of years back and said that Simon Armitage, the poet laureate, has written a poem on cancer. And they asked if I could engrave the poem on a couple of tablets. And it's really difficult. The tablets kept flaking. If I'm cutting into copper, steel, gold, aluminium, platinum, anything, you get a clean cut. But as soon as I touched the tablet, it flaked. It was awful. I tried baking that in the oven. I tried spraying it with a clear cast spray paint and couldn't get it right. I finished it and sent it off to them. And when I saw the pictures that they'd put in the national press, it was clear to me they'd photoshopped every letter to make it look better than I'd done it. But I bet some interesting people. One of the first people to buy a piece off me was Ronnie Barker, the actor. And he came into a gallery in London and I'd engraved a paperclip. And on the pointed end, I put a quote from Shakespeare's As You Like It. And it says, "All the world's a stage, all the men and women merely players." And he came into the gallery with his wife, introduced me to her, Joy. And he said, "Well, I've just finished working on television. I've had enough. But I've opened an antique shop in Chipping Norton." And he said, "I'm sitting upstairs, still in an office, typing scripts for other people while Joy's downstairs in the antique shop." And anyway, he said, "I'd love to buy it." And I didn't want him to go. I wanted to meet him. So, "Look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm a couple of hours away in Birmingham. I'll bring it to the shop." And he said, so we agreed on that. So I wanted to spend some time, have a chat with him. And I went several afternoons, actually, as well, because he said, "If you're in the area, give me a ring. If I'm not busy, come in. We'll have the afternoon, the chat, cup of tea." I was never anywhere near Chipping Norton, but I'd call him. And if he said, "I'm not busy," I'd run downstairs, get my car and drive over there. But absolutely a lovely man. And I can tell you now, he was the shyest man you could ever meet. Painfully shy.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, going back to my obsession in trying to be the best at everything, I'm a frustrated script writer, comedy. And I've always wanted to write a comedy series on television. And at the time, I'd written a half-hour play called More Canals Than Venice, which refers to Birmingham, which is supposed to have more canals than Venice. And it was about 4 men who met in 4 pensioners met in a cafe every day and tried to dream up plans to con people. That's what it was all about. And I told him this, and he said, "Let me have a look at it." So I took it to him, and he read through it, and he said, I'll change bits if you don't mind." And he said, "I've got a contact at the Radio 4 script unit, and we'll send it off." I thought, I've made it. I got Ronnie Barker rewriting the whole thing for me. We sent it off, and it brought me down to earth. I had a rejection slip, and I showed it to him, and he was as depressed as I was. And I said, I can't face doing it. He said, you rewrite it. I said, I can't. Not having that kind of help. Ronnie Barker writing it. And
it must have been really difficult, actually, like you say, because you are a person that excels at what you do. So to have something,
well, it was difficult, and because I just want to be the best at everything I do, and that hurt. That did. I thought I'd made it because Ronnie Barker had rewritten it for me and sent it off to the person he knows at the script unit. I thought, that's it. I'm in. New life, writing comedy. Didn't work. And I was in Birmingham driving through the city centre about 3 years ago, listening to the radio in my car, and there was a film producer on, and he said, we're looking for an old man who'd like to be in a film. And I thought, well, I fancy that. And he said, you don't have to have any acting experience. So I went along to the Central Library. They're holding auditions. And they gave me a script. I went into a room, lots of lights and cameras around me. And I read through it, went home. He called me the next day. He said, you've got the lead role. You're playing Ned in the film, Ned and Me. I was honest. I said, I've never acted before. And I know I noticed a couple of actors, they would have loved that part. Oh, he said, we didn't want you for your acting. We wanted you for your face. So I'm not going to read too much into that, but it was really interesting. The film was in London, went there for a few days, but when it was shown in an international film festival in Spain, and over 50 countries sent films in. I won the Best Actor award. I didn't think, hang on, if I've won that, how bad would all the other actors?
As well, isn't it? When someone's told you that they want you for your face, and you could having imposter syndrome.
So there you are. So my acting CV is better than George Clooney or anybody else, because every part I've auditioned for, I've got the lead role, and every film I've been in, I've won the Best Actor award. No, really pleased with that.
100% success rate.
That's it. Don't do any more, though. That's it. I'll ruin it.
That's brilliant, isn't it? It's funny as well, isn't it? Because like a lot of people get told, don't they? You know, if it don't first, you don't succeed. Try again and stuff. Which in your work, you will have had to do that so many times, and
I do.
Often you've done it again. But then, you know, in this area that you were really interested in, you didn't do that with the script. But then also, like you say, really enjoyed the acting. It was really good. But you know when to quit and go, okay, I've done that now. I can tick that box and focus on my work. It's quite a massive thing.
Yeah, no, every job I do, I slip on and repolish and start again. The only one I've gone straight from start to finish without slipping. Stephen Fry contacted me a few years ago now, and he said, I want to try and raise some money for English Pen. Now, English Pen is a charity that is involved with, and they represent imprisoned writers around the world. So he said, I'm sending you my fountain pen, and I want you to engrave a quote on it for me. I'm going to put it into Sotheby's. Any money raised, I'll give to English Pen. So he sent me the fountain pen, and he got a coating. He wanted a quote on the... Well, first of all, I knew he was an Oscar Wilde fan. So I engraved an Oscar Wilde quote, I can resist everything except temptation, on the tip of the nib. And it took me 3 months. I couldn't hold the nib tightly enough. A nib has a split end to allow the ink to flow. And I kept slipping, rubbing it down, starting again. After 3 months, he called me and he said, sorry, I haven't been in touch. I've been in America working, but I've now got the quote I want you to put on my pen. And I'd wasted 3 months on that. And he wanted, waggled in the right way, this inky little stick can change the world. But he wanted it on the barrel, and the barrel had got a coating. And I thought, I can't rub it off when I slip. It'll look awful. So I looked on the internet. I found a specialist fountain pen shop in Oxford. And I called them and I said, I told them the name of the pen. And he said, I've got two. I said, I'll keep them for me. I'm going to come and buy them in Birmingham. Be there soon. He said, before you come, it was the Silver Cross Podgy fountain pen. They said, before you come, they're £640 each. I didn't realise when I said to him, Silver Cross, they're made of silver. I had to have them. I couldn't risk losing the publicity of working with Stephen Fry. So went along, bought the pens, and that's the only job I've done where I've never slipped. I was so careful because it was for somebody else. So I've ended up with 2 expensive pens I didn't want in the first place.
At least you have 2 expensive pens to use.
But yeah.
You'll have to do one of them and auction that off and make you can keep the other one as a bit.
But of course, because it was for somebody else, I took my time. I was really careful.
That's amazing, isn't it? And I assume knowing that it was worth quite a bit before you started. It's not like razor blade.
Yeah. But of course, if I've got a pin that I'm working on, if I buy gold pins, they're only about £20 each. The jewellers in the jewellery quarter make them for me. And if I slip on that, repolish, doesn't matter. But for somebody else, I was really careful.
No, and it's interesting you say that, because even in our line of work, sometimes we'll get something, and I did completely the opposite scale to what you do in January, and it was an 800 mil diameter stainless steel bezel to go around the things they bury, a time capsule. So it was the bezel for that, and it was massive, and it had all been engineered out with slots in it and stuff, and I thought, that's not cheap, because it was like, I think it was 20 or 25 mil thick stainless in the middle bit before it was let out, and I thought, that's not cheap. And that certainly heightened my concentration.
No, it's okay working with your hands, but it really is. It's a delight when it's finished and you can feel proud of what you've done, so it's worth it. I wasn't academically inclined at school. I didn't know what I was at school for. I haven't got a clue.
A lot of people go through school even now where they're bored, it's not interesting to them, and I think often there's a lot of pressure on what you're going to be when you leave school, but you're 78 and you've been doing, you're still working because it drives you and it's something you love. People don't need to know at 16 what they want to do. You can't possibly know, can you?
No, it's too young. You can change your mind a few times after that age. Yeah.
And like, you're from a time where people did stay in their careers, didn't they? For
God,
starting.
Yeah, exactly. They were going to work in banks, and that was a job for life, which it isn't now.
No, exactly. And it's interesting, isn't it, as well, though, because it does show that if you stick at something, you do get that success in the end, don't you? I mean, how long had you been doing it, or how old were you when you started to get that kind of level of fame from it, of going, oh, well, actually, I know I'm actually the best now?
Yeah, somebody gave me a nail, a steel nail, 6 inches long, 1/2 inch wide on the head. And when I polished the head, I saw that somebody had previously engraved the Lord's Prayer. And that gave me the idea. And I thought, what if I could engrave the Lord's Prayer, but on the head of a pin, which would be 50 times smaller? And I spent years and years on that. I hadn't got a clue. What I do now, every job I do, I have a big oversized sketch in front of me. Lots of guidelines on, and I can see where the letters fall. And I'm looking, say, the third line down, directly under an M is directly under a D in the line above it. I'm watching the layout. Originally, I started on the engraving on the pins, and I'd start on one side, get to the other side, and find I was halfway through a word that was no good. I was hopeless. But once I got the layout, that was quite good. Nowadays, the jewellers make me gold pins, and they're soft, they're easy to work on, they're flat. I was working on steel dress pins. They were too hard, too brittle.
Yeah, it is amazing, isn't it, how that evolves? And like you say, gold's more expensive, but easier to work with. So when you consider that your time is obviously worth a hell of a lot more than the original item, it does make sense.
Yeah. When I finished it, somebody in Yorkshire called me, and he said, I'll be your manager if you want. He said, if you do a few more items, we'll put them into a gallery, which we did in Lancashire. And when I went along to the gallery, got 12 items there. I walked in and sold. It was on 11 of them. Wow. Couldn't believe it. And he said, I can get you in at a gallery in Mayfair in London next to the Ritz. And he said, you'll do well there. So we went along with about 30 items, all under the microscopes, all laid out around this big gallery. There for 2 weeks. I was the only artist there. Didn't sell one thing.
Wow, you would not.
I know. exactly in Mayfair, you think that's the place. Yeah. Nothing. So, and again, that brought me down to earth.
Interesting though, because I feel like if you haven't got these times that do bring you back down to earth, you almost then, it like keeps you going, doesn't it? Kind of,
yeah.
So, and that is a like, mindset thing. A lot of people wouldn't, they'd like throw the towel in, wouldn't they, with any of these things? But it made you go, okay, well, no, I'm going to push again, and it's, you know, it's merit to you, isn't it? That is how you do perceive the kind of knockbacks, if you like. You know, obviously you've been in business for a very long time, and not, you're an artist. It's not necessarily, some people are thinking, well, you do, you know, you create something, it's not really in the business side, but it is, isn't it? And have you got any advice that you can give to people sort of early in their business journey that's helped you along the way?
Yeah, I don't know if it's advice, but go back to the beginning, you need luck. I was the luckiest person in the world when I went to London, and the stationery part, it was his day off. My business took off then. And this man, Charles Benson, helped me with, he put me in touch with, he called me one day. He said, I've been talking to the buyer, the stationery buyer at Liberty. I've never heard of Liberty in London. And he said, they want your stationery. And also he said, if you come, make it a day, because I've also spoke to somebody at Fortnum and Mason and Harrods. And I was doing their stationery, engraving their mostly letterheads. And from then it went, I was engraving for Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Balmoral, Sandringham, House of Commons, 10 Downing Street. If you get a letter from your MP, stamped in green at the top, you'll have the portcullis, and it will say House of Commons, London, SW1A 0AA. I've been doing those for a good 35 years. So, you know, just all because of that lucky day in London, it really took off. Couldn't believe it. But the only advice I would give, if you're in manufacturing and you're doing something that people will sell on, don't be greedy. Make your money, but leave something in it for others. Everybody's got to make a living. But when I started on my own, I was working from 5 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night. Now, everybody who works on their own, they'll work hard. They all work hard. So you're against other people who are working hard as well, but you just need some luck. You can't do anything about that. It'll either come your way or it won't.
That's really interesting as well, isn't it? Because I think in this time we're in now, a lot of people, particularly like the youngsters coming out of school at the moment, they come into business or whatever, and and even in work, they expect to be able, like everyone wants a work-life balance, and they want it now, which is interesting because yes, I understand it's important, and it is important that you look after yourself, but you've been able to look after yourself and get that longevity whilst working harder than everybody else, sort of thing. And I think it is that thing that you can't necessarily have everything at the same time. So you can't have success in your business and be the healthiest you've ever been and the happiest you've ever been. And do you know what I mean? There are times when you have to just knuckle down and put the work in. And like you say, then the lucky break will come if you keep at it. There's not going to be many people in life that slog away and never get that lucky break, because you've got to kind of make your own luck as well, haven't you? If, you know, you went there and chanced it, and yes, okay, you got lucky that he was there, but how many people in your same situation wouldn't have even gone, oh, Savile Row, no, that's a bit much, I'm not getting that.
Well, the thing is, you need good health as well. You don't know what's around the corner in life. In fact, a friend of mine, Roy, is the world's #1 expert on galvanizing, and he's a few years older than me, and he swims with me every morning, and he's got his health. He's a pain in the neck sometimes, but he's got his health, and so you can't do anything about that. You need good luck in that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could say you can't do anything about it, but you have, haven't you? Because you could have not done the swimming, you could have not looked after your health. So really, you've given yourself the best opportunity, haven't you?
Yeah. You've got to, haven't you? Yeah.
It's it's just so interesting talking to you. But from the people that you've met and the people that you've worked for, has anyone like massively surprised you and been really different to how you expected? Do you form these preconceived ideas like a lot of us do before we meet people, or not?
Yeah, a good friend of mine is Yuri Keller, and he invited me to his house many years ago when he lived in Sonning-on-Thames. He said, I want you to come to my house, spend a day with me, tell me all about it. I want to know the lot. So off I went. I've kept in touch with him ever since. I can tell you, when I was there, he said, first time, he said, did you bring a spoon with you for me to bend? Well, you can't do that. So I said, no. He said, I'll get you one from the kitchen. So it came back. He handed it to me. He said, check it. And we've all seen him over the years, bending a spoon, solid, normal teaspoon. And he sat next to me, and I thought, I'm going to watch this. If that goes up his sleeve, another one comes out, I'm watching. So I handed him the spoon. He held it in front of him. He stroked it 2 or 3 times. It started to bend. And I thought, I'm watching. And he handed it to me. He said, you can take that home with you. He picked up a felt tip pen, signed his name, Yuri Geller, on it. It wasn't hot. I couldn't straighten it. I didn't take my eyes off it for a second. But his self-belief is unbelievable. I think if athletes spent a day with him, they could run through brick walls. Absolutely unbelievable man.
It is amazing that, isn't it? Because they do say you're a product of who you spend time with. And, you know, given with what you do, you have met some, like you say, people like that. They're highly impressive people. And it must really help with that belief piece for yourself as well.
Yeah. Not about some interesting people.
Yeah, Graham.
Sorry?
You a reader? Do you read?
No, I read the paper. That's about. I don't have time for reading.
No, well, you wouldn't, would you? I often at the end of this podcast, we need to leave people with a book that might be something that you should definitely read. That's why I asked you if you fitted into that.
No, I really don't have time. I work 3 or 4 nights in a row, and then at my age, I do get tired. I can't do every night. So on the nights I'm not working, the days I'm not working, that's when I'm on the internet looking for the sketches and the phrases and quotes. I like nice ones about children and families to engrave.
Yeah, that's nice.
And that's when I do my sketches.
That free reign to decide what the quote is as well, isn't it? Because that must be part of the process for you. Yeah. Oh, that would be a nice thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Than being told, especially after you've already started. That's always disappointing.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up then. But thank you so much. And back on that piece of making your own look, I reached out to you the other day, didn't I? And I followed you for a long time because of the engraving link. And I thought, what have I got to lose? I'm going to ask Graham if he'll come on my podcast because I know he's a really interesting chap and I really wanted you to be on. And what's the worst that can happen? And I think it is that interesting thing where people sometimes put off doing something, but actually the worst that you could have said was no, and you didn't. And I'm so delighted that you didn't. And I think it is just that piece for people to, just go for it and try, and you'll get there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah. So thank you so much, Graham. I'll share your link so people can come on your website and have a look.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks very much. We got there in the end.
Yeah, we had tech issues.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Many Hats of Business, the podcast. Your support means a lot to me. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your business friends as they may find it useful too. If you hit the follow button, you'll be first to know when a new episode lands. See you next time.